I got the vaccine? What if I didn't have to think about leaving my son or daughter or wife or husband to fend for themselves? And that's the reality that we all see. And it's easy to have opinions about something until you've seen that and seen that in people's faces.
I know you don't want the ventilator, but I mean, what if it was ventilator or death? If it meant saving your life, would you want the ventilator?
I think this has to get back to being what it is, and that's a health crisis. It's not about anything more than that. It's not about who you are, or where you're from, or what you believe in, or what you don't believe in. This is a health crisis, and there's ways to deal with it. When you look at it for what it is, the only thing left to do is come together and defeat it. I think that's what's tough about this, is so many lessons learned, yet we're in the same spot. All the experience, all the surges, it doesn't even matter at this point. It's just, we're in the same spot.
Can I make a quick
Fortunately,
request?
I can't remember the
Sure.
ventilator.
Can you tell us the title that we're about to watch when you press play so that we can follow in the spreadsheet?
Sure. Ashley or Cassidy, are you able to do that?
Yes, of course. Sorry, I was just muted. Yeah, of course. I'm sorry that I didn't do that prior.
No, that's quite all right. That one was as COVID-19 patients fill the ICU again, a doctor wondered why it had to be this way.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Of course, of course. All right. So now going to the second one, it is hesitancy or access issues, the COVID vaccine challenges in the Black community. And I guess keep them all open.
Mucinex, all in one and done.
You have some questions?
What side effects should I expect with the vaccine virus?
First of all, you know the vaccine doesn't have the virus in it. Did you know that?
No, not really. I don't hardly know anything about it.
When the vaccine gets in your body, it has to ramp your body up and prepare it to protect you. And so that's what was going on. The side effects of the vaccine are different for different people. I've been engaging in community conversations for a long time, but when the pandemic started, all of those conversations shifted to coronavirus, the pandemic, and now we're almost exclusively focused on talking about the vaccine. Yeah, so I definitely would encourage you to get the vaccine.
You're
gonna get it, yeah. I haven't found too many people that don't want to get it, so that's good. So I think helping people understand the science, how the process works normally, even pre-pandemic, I think gives people some comfort and reassurance. So these are all words that are spoken on TV, on the radio, when people are talking about coronavirus. And having signed up to be a participant in the Moderna trial, I can also tell people my story. And I have to say, it changes minds. I actually was in a vaccination trial, coronavirus vaccine study. So we do have vaccinations.
So where can a person go to get?
Do you have a doctor? We are seeing Black people dying at higher rates of COVID-19. We're also seeing higher infection rates. And a lot of this is because Black people are more likely to be on the front lines, deemed essential workers, and unable to quarantine. Oh, so you want the vaccine?
Yes, ma'am. I'm ready, willing, and waiting.
Ready, willing, and waiting to go. All right, yes.
I mean, it's not unique to DC. I think we're seeing this story played out all over the country. Right now, what we're trying to do is make sure we have enough people signed up for vaccines to make it work.
20.
So that's the problem. So,
now, the dilemma we're in is that despite this disparity in health issues, they have multiple factors weighing against them to get the one intervention that could be life-saving for them. One, there's an entirely understandable hesitancy regarding a vaccine that is either developed by or facilitated by the federal government.
Yeah, I mean, I think our goal should be if there's 105 seniors living there, we should try and get like at least 90 of them vaccinated. I think that coupled with, it's a new vaccine, I think, just the fear from African Americans and their experiences with healthcare in the past, and whether or not, they themselves experienced Tuskegee or those things that happened many years ago, I think that effect, is generational. So we need to get at least 40 signed up to do it before we can come back. So we're gonna knock on people's doors.
If you have friends over 65, let them know.
You already got your shot? Okay. Okay, great.
I can prove it to you.
So we're not gonna knock on your door then. Hey, how's it going? We're doing the COVID vaccine next week here. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone has an opportunity.
So unless there's transparency and respect, and healthcare providers need to have a sense of humility also about the way we engage with the community and with our patients. So until we also look at our role, I think we will continue to see a lot of these health disparities.
No, I'm not taking that shot. I told I wouldn't take that shot.
Oh, is there any information I can give you?
No.
You just definitely don't want it?
No, I don't.
Okay, all right,
thank you so much.
Okay, have a good day.
You do the thing.
I think, people still, experience kind of stigma and bias in emergency rooms when they seek treatment for care. And so I think it's just that sort of fear and mistrust is just going to be there. So it's not going to be any different with the COVID vaccine. Are you concerned about the shot? Is that why you don't like?
I'm not concerned about none. I don't want none of the shots.
Okay.
I don't want none of the shots.
Okay.
I'm not taking no shots.
Okay, you don't have to take anything. We're just here because we wanted to give you the opportunity.
I don't want no shots.
Okay.
I ain't taking that.
Okay, there it is. All right.
Well, there are some people that are reluctant, and I was one of those that was reluctant about getting it. The reason is because of the different experiments that African Americans and people of color have had to go through the years. And my main concern was the fact that I don't think it's been long enough to know what the side effects are.
You got mine? Because I ain't had it yet.
Yes.
You got my folder.
And often they say, well, we went too fast. You always tell us that it takes years to develop a vaccine.
We're going to start doing the vaccines tomorrow out in the community.
Why were you able to do it in less than a year, where you get the sequence in January and then 11 months later you have vaccine going into people's arms?
Yes.
They're actually they're really tiny. This is 10, that's 100 doses.
Holy moly.
And you explained that that is really a reflection of the extraordinary advances in science, the science of vaccine platform technology that took place a decade or more before we even began thinking about COVID-19. So it isn't as fast as you think.
I just don't want any doses wasted, okay?
Awesome.
All right, thank you all for doing that.
Yeah, I'm excited. Yeah, go smoothly.
So I want us to really change the narrative to talk about vaccine acceptance and how it's increasing. Because the more people see Black people or folks who look like them getting the vaccine, I am confident the rates will only increase.
After talking with a number of people, reassuring me of the safety of it, I just decided in the last few days that I would go ahead and get it.
You had a little bit of apprehension in the beginning. Do you have any questions for us now that you feel ready to go? Is there anything else we can answer?
I'm ready to go. You all have convinced me, and
Okay.
I trust you. So
Thank you.
I hope that the study had been longer.
Yeah.
Now I would have felt better.
That's a challenging thing with having something that is
So
new,
new.
but we need enough people to get vaccinated so that we
Yes.
can create that herd immunity.
Exactly.
So it's kind of a
So I'm-
double-edged sword. You feel like
So
you
I'm
want to
like
be one
in
of the
the
first.
experimental stage. That's the way I'm looking at it.
The good thing is that so many people have gotten it by now that I think we've seen the majority of things we're going to see. You know.
Right. Okay.
That's what Dr. Fauci says.
I trust Dr. Fauci. Okay.
All right, so I am.
But there are other obstacles, and that is accessibility. So let's say somebody decides they want to get vaccinated. If you look again at the statistics, given the population of African Americans demographically represented and the relative proportion who've gotten vaccinated to compare whites to blacks, it's way out of proportion. They're underrepresented.
All done.
That was very gentle.
All done.
My word. I'm surprised.
Well, I'm an expert right
You
now.
could hardly feel the prick.
And the way around that is what the current administration has been trying to do. One, to establish community vaccine centers to make sure that they're positioned in a place, not exclusively, but clearly in areas that are demographically representative of the African American community. And then to get mobile units to go out into the community to make sure that not easily accessible areas are covered by vaccine implementation.
So the issue that we're having is that people don't really have like a time block. They're just all here, so we're just gonna have them, you know, like put 8 per hour type of thing, but we'll get to everybody, that's for sure.
When you live in an underserved community, you're poor, maybe you don't have transportation, there are already a lot of barriers to accessing services or even care.
It's a small stick.
But if we really want to reduce these disparities, we have to eliminate as many barriers as possible.
There you go.
Do your vaccination card. On the one side, it'll have today's date, and then the other side will tell you in 4 weeks when to come back.
And deploying these services into the community, I think, is a really powerful way and impactful way to do that.
I said, how many have we done? 5, 6? It's okay, it's the first day.
All right, and then this next one we have coming up, the title of it is going to be Paramedics on the Front Lines of the Latest COVID-19 Surge.
Hey. So one of the interns has called me and she's concerned that she's been exposed to COVID from a patient today. She said that they were doing breathing treatments and CPAP on the patient. She did have her N95 and gloves on, but she didn't have her eye protection on. At the very beginning of COVID, everyone was scared because we didn't know what was going on. We were concerned that we didn't have the appropriate PPE, the personal protective equipment that we needed, and there were just a lot of unknowns. And we didn't know if we were going to get sick, and if we got sick, what that was going to do to us or our family. So, I mean, it was scary. So it says this patient's unconscious, and I don't have any ALS to send, which means I don't have any paramedics to send. So we're going to go over there and see how bad the patient is, and we'll have to provide care if we need to. And then everyone thought we were getting better, and then this Delta wave hit, and it's just been terrible ever since. For this last wave so far of the coronavirus, it has just been worse than it was before. We've seen a lot more patients, whereas at the beginning we did have an X amount of patients, but they weren't sick like they are now. We're seeing multiple people with the COVID pneumonia. We're seeing lots of people that have actually gone to the emergency room or to their doctor. They've tested positive and or they've been diagnosed with the pneumonia. A day or two later, they're just struggling to breathe. And we're having to either intubate them or do CPAP or do other procedures on them to try to get them stabilized, to get them to the hospital alive. While he's getting situated, we need an O2 tank, that way he can go into the hospital. We've also seen an uptick in the cardiac arrests that have also been COVID positive as well, where we didn't see as many of that as before in the first wave.
You ventilate him a little bit faster. I want to see if I can get that capnography to come down any.
We know that sometimes when we have to intubate someone in the field, they may or may not come off the ventilator once they get to the hospital. So it weighs heavily on us that we have to do that, thinking that they may not never wake up or they may perish while they're on the ventilator. Resuscitated arrests have to go to a cath lab, remember?
I know.
Fortunately, we kind of know what we're doing since we've already lived through it for this long. We're more skilled at being better protected, at using our critical thinking and knowing exactly what we're doing and how we're handling it.
Virginia Beach for EMS 1.
Go ahead. But the thing that we're having trouble with is handling the sheer amount of people that we're seeing on a daily basis.
Yes, we're good.
It's stressful. All of our volunteers, all of our career staff, they are working to the max. They are going to the hospital, dropping their patient off, and then having to leave just to go get another one.
All right, well, we're going to get you on the stretch and get you over to the hospital, okay?
And I'm not saying that it's just purely COVID that is affecting us. You know, we have the typical medical calls, the heart attacks, the strokes, the accidents. But with all the COVID cases on top of it, it's running us really, really thin. So,
is there a medicine? Does he have a medicine list in here too?
Morale is low, stress is high.
Do you know what medicines he takes?
As far as people's home lives, they're scared of taking it home. I'm scared of taking it home to my family. I haven't seen my family since 2019 at Christmas, and then the virus hit, so I've avoided them. My husband has also avoided his family, so we haven't seen our family in quite some time, and it's just stressful. I worry that I'm going to come home not knowing that I am infected, and he'll potentially become infected. We are both vaccinated, but it's still scary to know that we could still contract the virus, that it could still potentially have long-term effects.
He told me his head was killing him.
I believe it.
Frustrations are rather high. We're overrun, we're stressed out, we're overworked. We just need people to realize that they can help us by getting the vaccine, social distancing, and following proper mask guidance. It would help us tremendously. Hey, this is Randy with BGMS. Someone called requesting transport for room 109.
Right, for our fourth entry we have here, the title is going to be What We Lost and What We Found.
We'll never be who we were in 2019, ever.
It's been a very isolating time, as it has been for many of us.
It's a lot of energy being like, oh, poor me, when it's really poor everyone. We're all sort of missing out on a lot of things.
We were facing something that we did not know anything about in terms of how it spreads, what could we do to prevent it, and how to treat it, most importantly. So this was beginning of the spring or at the end of February last year. So that was the scary part. As the COVID cases started to surge up and we noticed a lot of patients coming in very afraid of what's going to happen to them. Even if they came in contact with someone who had COVID, we saw them. That peaked somewhere in April when we were in the middle of the pandemic and the first wave, which was starting to feel like it would never end.
It's like a ghost town. It is crazy. It is crazy. It's unbelievable to know how the building was before, like a year ago, comparing to now. It's like you lost your mom. I don't have that energy no more. The music give me that energy. Hear the music in the building, it give me that energy, just keep me, motivate me, keep me moving. It's like, but now it's like, you're craving for that music, you're craving for something to motivate you and stuff like that. I have to be here and to keep the people safe who here with me and who come through the building. So I like that. I like that responsibility to keep the building clean.
For me, music has always been sort of a therapeutic activity. In the pandemic, I feel perhaps even more lucky to have that as part of my life because it gives me sort of a way to travel in ways that other people can't necessarily experience on their own. I can travel through time and to cultures through the music, and that's something that's really special. As a musician, I've learned a lot of new music on my own that otherwise I may not have had the motivation to learn because boredom, time, but also kind of an element of existential dread that kind of puts the fire underneath you to work.
Me and two of my best friends, we would talk about it and we were trying to be really hopeful and be like, senior year is gonna be our year, like we're gonna pop off, like we're gonna do the thing. And you know, well, we have in our own right, but it really just like is that like missed connection where it's like, I don't feel right like hanging out with my friends all the time because I don't want to put them in danger or put myself in danger.
There's a lot of trauma that's happened to people. There's a lot of feelings of not being in control. I think when you look at the 500,000 people plus that we've lost, and you know, I think the numbers were up to 3,300 healthcare providers that we know of. I look at numbers, obviously, you know, it's numbers, but behind those numbers are people who left behind so many people that are going to miss them and love them. So I think it's going to absolutely just leave an imprint on our souls for a very long time.
Just the live, the in-person exchange is just so vital and important, and that is something that we're all reckoning with as a society right now. So I had contacted a few musicians that I know, and we put together a concert here in the courtyard of my building. It was a really special and nourishing environment. Some of the musicians had not played in months. That was the first time they had performed publicly for anybody.
It's like when there's really nothing that's pulling me out there, and you know, you're actually being told that you shouldn't be going outside, it's like the whole world is starting to like get really small and really suffocating. So there was definitely a point where I was like really, really depressed and just like really struggling.
I'm hanging on in there. I know it's not going to be forever, might be long, but it's not going to be forever. I know it's going to come back one day. I can't wait for that day to come.
And I think we're beginning to see the sunlight through the fog of COVID.
This last year has been really something that I hope we'll never see again in our lifetime. We never thought we'd be doing things that we are doing now, and they've become the norm.
Okay, thank you. I think we're going to pause there and talk about the first 4 videos. We just saw 4 really powerful stories on the pandemic, year 2 of the pandemic. Were there any that stood out to you guys?
I can go first. I guess starting with that last piece, I really appreciated just kind of, I wouldn't have thought to, I like that they chose to tell it through primarily the symphony space and also the teenager from the Boston Arts Academy, and just the way, the kind of the isolation that's come with the pandemic. In particular, I appreciated that they began that section with the head cleaner from the symphony. And it was beautifully shot, and the shots that she chose, like those, just there was that shot of the empty seats that really, I think, yeah. And I always feel like sometimes also with story, it's not always, it's about finding people who can express what they want to say, but then you have the responsibility to make sure you choose the right bites. And it just, everything he said, it was really heart-wrenching.
I also really liked that piece. I did feel, I mean, it's incredible that one person did that much for that one piece and access that many people. I may have wanted them to focus a little more just on the symphony parts. Going back and forth to the hospital was maybe even like slightly confusing for me. And I kind of wanted to just stay with, the concert in the courtyard and learn how all these people sort of intersect with one another. That would have been, I think, a really great culminating moment to sort of understand more how they're all connected. And then sort of going in and out of the hospital, it sort of confused that connection for me a little bit. But a really nice use of footage. I liked their establishing shots and how they spent time at the beginning, establishing what they were going to talk about a little more than the other 3 pieces, which were all much more newsy, right? Like no music, great access on the other 3 pieces. Especially, I liked the first one, hesitancy or access issues from the physician's point of view. I'm sorry, that wasn't the first one, but it was with the physician in the street explaining to a real person how the vaccine works. I thought was extremely effective way to dive into that video instead of having the physician explaining to camera. Established a lot of trust.
The last one also really jumped out for me. I thought they did a really amazing job setting that mood. And I was like checking the date on it and realized it came out in March 2021, which I'm just thinking about how heart-wrenching that would be to watch at that time, like really, really well timed as well. I also really liked the first one from the physician's perspective on, I'm forgetting the title of it, but what physicians were dealing with in the Delta wave and with the relatively low vaccination rates. I loved the production of it, sort of having the sound ups like intersect with the interview from the physician. I thought it was really seamlessly edited.
Yeah, that first physician one was really good access, watching them work with patients and talk to the patients and make decisions with the patients. That was pretty impressive. And he was also very expressive and made for really good VO, I thought.
Yeah, the first one jumped out to me as well, particularly, yeah, it was the access, but also I like that it was centered in just kind of one moment for the most part, or one afternoon it felt like. And yeah, that moment when he said to the patient, the respirator or death is, I think, kind of nails it home for the viewer.
It's a really good antidote to the political discourse, right? This was just like very straightforward medical POV.
Also, on the paramedics video, I appreciated just seeing that perspective. I think when we look at medical worker, I mean, the video was great itself, but what jumped out to me was that when we've looked at medical staff, I don't think there's been a ton of coverage of paramedics and what they've been dealing with. So I was impressed by that choice.
I was asking myself during the ride along video, also great access, and, you know, a clear, you know, clear POV to follow along with and learn his experience. I was asking myself a lot, because this was during the Delta surge, and I wanted to know often when we're sharing how terrible the symptoms were, are these people vaccinated or are they unvaccinated? Because there was just so much fear in that early stage of Delta around, you know, is this going to be this bad for me if I did get vaccinated or not? And there was a lot of misinformation going around about that. So I think that might have been an important thing to note, although I don't know that he would have been legally able to provide vaccination status of the patients he's talking about. Maybe it should have been included early on, though.
Great. Unless people have other comments about these stories, we could go on and watch the next 4 and then come back, and we can always discuss the first 4 in our next discussion as well.
All right. So you guys are ready for the next 4 then?
Yeah.
All right. Perfect.
And the title for this next one we have is going to be Devils in That Water, How Flooding Changed Cynthia Anna's Forever.
It started raining, and it was raining really, really hard.
And I've never seen the water ever rise in my lifetime at the rate that it did, and it has never done that since.
I'm still cleaning mud from 20-some years ago.
The fear of knowing there was nothing you could do about it. And you could try your best to save everything, and you were always going to leave something behind that you couldn't save. So it was devastating to see, and something that you didn't think you would be able to come back from. So this is the area that really got flooded. You see, this is all my neighborhood down here. And then this is where my house is on this page right here. This is my house right here. I had water in my house for the first time in all my life, but we made it back. It was a fight with the government to get it, but I got it. They kept telling me that my house was condemned, and I kept telling them, no, it's not. even though I was determined to go back in the house and preparing to go back in the house, when it came the day to actually open up the door and walk in there, it was impossible.
When they finally got to go back home, everybody realized they didn't have no home no more. I remember the front door was kind of warped a little bit from the water. I literally had to kick in our front door. That felt odd, considering that door had welcomed me in so many years, and to open it up and see the devastation, that's the memory that sticks out in my head. I can remember looking down the road here, and it was just trash on both sides. And it was everybody's personal belongings. So I shouldn't call it garbage. That's because it wasn't garbage. They just had to get rid of everything that they had. You know, it's just hard when you lose everything. We had albums and things that we had had for years. Of course, I lost my mother at 12 in '84, and we had a bunch of photos of her that was just ruined and gone. So those are memories I'll never get back. And you know, it just wasn't me. It was every neighbor, every block.
When I went back into my house about 2 weeks later, my refrigerator was actually in my living room. My daughter, it crushed her bedroom. I mean, her bed went through the wall and everything. And I tell people now, and I'll say it was just evil devils in that water. I don't like a lot of water anymore. I can't hardly get in the tub. I think it's the thought of the water. I can't get that out of my, I can't. When it flooded, it changed our lives. We lost so many people, not to death, but because they left the community, some of them didn't come back.
A lot of people wanted to be able to rebuild because back then a lot of people owned those properties. And most of them was older, they just didn't have the financial resources. So a lot of those individuals ended up just leaving. We lost a lot of the Black community because of that.
This stopped being the African-American neighborhood completely.
That was kind of sad because I lost friends that way, people I actually went to school with, grew up with, played with.
They don't want to live down here. I can understand it, because if the flood happens, you gonna flood. That's most definite.
The devastation that caused was incredible. And you know, everybody thinks of tornadoes and hurricanes. People really probably underestimate the power of a flood.
When we have that threat, or when the water comes out the banks down here, and just to watch people now load up their furniture and stuff, it's just like, oh my gosh.
When it rains, you can't help but think about it when you've been through something like that, because it was unreal.
That flood changed my life forever.
The title for this one is Parents Died from COVID-19, Leaving a Huge Hole.
Mom got sick first, then my dad got sick. They were both in the hospital at the same time, both in ICU, next to each other. There's irony in the fact that they left together, you know, because they were always together, and they always wanted to be together. There's a huge hole there where they both stood so tall. My dad was from Mexico, and he was a very proud immigrant. My mom's from in Brownsville, Texas. My parents met in Eastern Washington. My parents settled here in Skagit after being migrant farm workers for so long. My uncles and my grandparents always said like this was the place people treated them the nicest. I'm the youngest of 6. There's 3 boys and 3 girls. My dad's definitely a family man, a person that took pride in his family and wanted to see you succeed. If you were successful, he was successful. He's proud of his business. My mom, you know, she was the most loyal person that I've ever met in my life. We're not perfect, you know, but in my mom's eyes, like, we were. And we couldn't do any wrong. You'd show up and, you know, first thing, have you eaten? You know? She loved to shop. One of the worst days of her life was when she found out the local Macy's was gonna close down. In our family and in our culture, Sundays is a big thing, you know, to get together for meals and whatnot. On certain Sundays, we've cooked meals and taken them out there and hung out with them. My dad used to always, he'd show up with there'd be 5 people at dinner, and he'd show up with this, you know, 2 giant grocery bags full of pan dulce, you know, and like the kids, like there's these big, you know, pink conchas, and the kids call it pink bread or pink pan, and they love it. And so, like, you know, they talk about my dad in that sense, and they remember him that way. I think the saddest part, especially with like our culture and our family, is how much it means to be around people. This disease is something that, you know, you don't want to be around people, right? You hear so many people talk about numbers, and they don't see people as people. You know, those numbers are real people. My parents are real people. And regardless of like whatever like pre-existing conditions they may have had, like, it wasn't their time to go. They should still be here, you know? Dad should be walking out there with my son, you know, and showing him that cow. You know, should be able to come over to my mom's house and have her make food for Benny, you know? Not being able to be there with them, you know? Like, I live like 3 blocks from the hospital, and I could just go stand outside the window and I couldn't be there. You know, there's so many folks dealing with this stuff. My heart, you know, we pray every night for people that aren't close to their family that are sick, you know, because it's just heartbreaking.
You don't remember your first communion?
When your parents pass, people tell you these things and how your parents might have affected their lives and how they contributed to their lives. And I'm so proud of them to be my parents. I'm so proud of the legacy that they've left here in this community and in our family. My son and my nieces and nephews, that's my parents' legacy. I'm really happy they got to know Benny. He'll have memories of them, and to make sure that he knows who they are. Make sure that their presence is in his life too, you know? My son is a Sanchez. What kind of path am I going to create for him, you know? What kind of like opportunities are we going to give to him so that he can succeed in life, you know? And that doesn't just come from me, it comes from my dad and his parents and their parents and my mom and her parents. Honoring, you know, the folks that came before us and making sure that we do good by them.
Ashley, just wondering if there's a way to move that black bar that's near the top of the frame. Am I the only one seeing that?
Oh yeah, I can definitely. Let's see if I can. Oh, 1 second. Did that work?
I think so, yeah.
All right, perfect.
The title for this one's going to be A Year After Fire, Malden Residents Continue to Rebuild.
Now it's at the bottom of the frame.
It's been a tough year for everyone in the nation with COVID.
I'm so sorry, guys. Now you guys see this black bar at the bottom?
Yeah.
I just want to get rid of it. One second.
And
Here, let me play you guys this video and then I'll go ask Mark if he knows how to get rid of it.
Okay, yeah, it's in a better place now than it was before. I'm just in the top right corner, but if we can get rid of it entirely, that would be best. But if not, it's good where it is.
Okay, perfect. I will go ask Mark and then I'll play y'all this video and then hopefully by afterwards we'll have him here.
Okay.
All right.
and we had the trauma of losing 80% of the town. And people's lives have not been the same since.
There was never a general feeling here that we're in danger of a forest fire, because it is mostly wheat fields, right? Like, this isn't a forest, but there are a lot of trees in these draws, and it did come along a system that led right to town.
It was September. It was bone dry.
Yeah, it was just a little bit before noon. It was quite windy, and I mean really windy, like 40, 50, 60 miles an hour.
As the fire engulfed Malden, they were 70-mile-an-hour winds.
The sight and the sound was very different than I've ever experienced before. You know, something being consumed that quickly. There was not time to save anything. It was, let's get people out. If we had 100 trucks here, or even air support, there was no way to stop that fire.
We just jumped in the car and grabbed our dog, and our safety box was all we had is a few things in it. The fire was burning alongside the road. You could feel the heat coming through the car, and the smoke was so bad you could only go 50, 60 feet or so, and then you'd have to stop and look around a little bit, and you didn't dare stop very long because the fire was there.
Once the fire started to die down, about an hour, 15 minutes after it had come through town, I started to edge my way back in. Literally, looked like London, World War II bombings, that nothing else compares. It looked like something had been dropped in every intersection to flatten buildings, push down walls. Everything was black. If it used to be a building or a fence or something, it was burning. I'd say between 200 and 300 people evacuated that day. We experienced a horrific event here. It could have been a lot worse with loss of life. We got everybody out. We lost all the houses though. So how do we help the community rebuild? Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Malden Pine City Recovery Call. I'm Scott Hokinson. I'm the director of the Long-Term Recovery Group. I'll be facilitating the call today. Pretty big meeting for us because this is our, as close as we're going to have in this call to our anniversary date. A lot of our residents needed housing immediately. They needed temporary housing, and we were in COVID. Everything was taken away during, lockdowns, when you're supposed to stay at home. What happens when you don't have a home? Some don't have any resources, and so are looking for ways to piece things together. Some have some resources and are making plans. My efforts have been for the residents who need help the most. So this is pretty typical, though, for a home site. It's in a way good that we have a couple left so we can point to it and show what used to be, and how all the success that we've had on 96% of the rest of the lots. This is what people came back to, except, 3 days later, except there were still flames coming out and definitely smoke and fumes. And it was, the debris like this was everywhere, not piled up nicely like this. It's pretty devastating. 90% of the trees that burned, 100% were 100% burned have been removed already. So it actually looks a lot better. It might look like devastation, but to us, it's a huge improvement. It's a mental issue having all of those burned trees around, those black sticks. It looks like the end. And so to get those out of here, you can start to see things are greening up again, and you can start to see recovery rather than seeing just devastation. So it was more right now just to get, things out of there so people could have a clear eye towards recovery.
I'm putting in extra outlets so that when we start rebuilding, we'll be able to plug in sawzalls and table saws, any power equipment stuff it's going to take to build with. I do not want to spend another winter in this motorhome. I think it was on July the 4th that we moved into here in 1994. It was a one-story house, and Joy and I built it ourselves. We lost that house and a workshop and a couple storage buildings. We just plain lost everything. We lost everything on this property. The only thing that we were able to save on this property was that Ford pickup out there. So what happened was Joy died 44 days after the fire. Her health wasn't very good, and after she seen that we lost everything, she just gave up. I just think that I want to rebuild a house in her memory, because it just seems the right thing to do. Seems the right thing to do.
We have 23 folks living in recreational vehicles through the winter. Our number one need is housing, housing, housing.
A stick-built house is 2 years out, even if I had the money to pay a contractor. I really want every single resident who wants to come back, give them an opportunity to come back, because we do need more people coming in, paying taxes, taking part in local government, caring about the community. When it was still smoking, it was still burning, people came and said, it doesn't seem like it now, but there's a way forward.
Okay, I think that they're hidden now. Let's see when I go into this last one. But now I'm stuck like unmuted. Okay.
title for this one is Crisis Mode Continues, Healthcare Workers Find Ways to Cope a Year into the Pandemic.
Last year took a toll on all of us. We saw a lot more sick people than we used to. We saw a lot more death. The same as the general population, but at the end of the day, you can go home to your family. Most of us didn't. You know, we were scared to bring it home to our loved ones. This little thing right here is going to sit right in front of your mouth and it's going to tell me how your lungs are doing, okay? The majority of our calls that we responded to were patients who had COVID-19, some of the sickest of them all. And with COVID-19, we never got a break.
We became nurses to save lives. We weren't able to save every life. There was no time to grieve. During the worst of COVID, there was like this pang of pain that you felt every time that you would lose a patient, but then you had to immediately refocus and redirect yourself, reprioritize to the next patient.
Dealing with COVID-19 for the past year has been emotionally challenging. During the peak, every day we had really serious cases, like multiple very serious cases, and everyone needed some kind of oxygen support. The really bad ones needed ventilators. Death every day as well. And now you can see there's patients everywhere because of this. When I talk with my coworkers, that's the thing that hits them the most and left the longest lasting mark was just like the unexpected death. Like some patients you knew they were bad, and then probably they wouldn't make it. And then there was always those where like you couldn't see it coming, and then all of a sudden they required a lot of attention and didn't make it.
My immediate family lives up in Rockland, which is right over the bridge, about 20 minutes away. COVID impacted us because we don't see each other as often now. At the beginning of COVID, my dad was diagnosed with cancer again. They postponed non-emergent surgeries. Right, so in the case of my dad, they planned on doing a surgery that would allow them to give him a higher dose of chemo. They weren't able to do it because everything was postponed until much later. So, you know, the cancer got bigger. He died in September.
My family is everything to me. And during the worst of the pandemic here in New York, they supported me so much and they prayed for me every single day. They cooked for me. That was such a big deal. You can leave it right here. Yes, okay. I went from me living with my parents, you know, just regular day-to-day life, to me moving out in like a day, to an empty apartment living on an air mattress. That was difficult. Okay. Now I see them every day. Usually after work, I will come home, take a shower, I'll put on my sleeping clothes, my pajamas and everything. And now I'm getting ready to see my parents. I'm grateful because we're all vaccinated and I feel comfortable seeing them without my mask on. My mom is the best cook in New York City. She has to be. I mean, I know everybody says that about their mom, but it's true for mine.
Please pray for everybody's well, that everybody approach the good in each other and try to be the best.
Okay. Yeah. So what's going on? What can I help you?
She have problem with the breath. She have pain in the back.
My wife was actually kind of shocked to see like how much it actually affected me. I mean, I guess I was scared on multiple fronts. Like in a selfish, personal way, I didn't know if I get COVID-19, how I would be affected by it. And that was why my wife and I talked and we decided to live separately so that they could be protected from possible exposures. The end of the pandemic is not the end of the damage. There's a lot of emotional healing, financial healing too, that's gonna have to happen. We've seen race issues start to come up too. There are pretty routinely like people saying, I don't want an Asian doctor, and like using slurs. Part of that I think is a result of this pent up, like unexplored grief and sadness and anxiety.
Dr. Johnson to EMS triage, please.
The past year, I know some people, it made them question their choice, and I don't blame them because it was scary. It still is scary. Me personally, I think it actually confirmed that I made the right choice to go into healthcare. I never was like, maybe I should stop doing this. For me, it was like, I'm going to work, I'm making this happen, and we'll get through this.
COVID has not gone away, so I don't feel like it's over for me. I was meant to be a nurse. I know that from day one, and I think that the pandemic even further validated that and solidified that in my heart and mind, is that this is my path in life.
I know what we're doing matters. Watching as we all came together, seeing that band of brothers and sisters that we have all over the country, all over the world, it definitely made my bond to this profession stronger.
L3, I'm out with them.
We're not out of the woods yet. For the foreseeable future, your first responders, your hospital workers will be in crisis mode. We'll just get better at dealing with it.
Mucinex, all in one and done.
Okay, I think that was the last one for this category. Thoughts, reactions to this four?
What a set of videos. That was incredibly moving. I really liked the structure of the last one we watched, Crisis Mode Continues, how we had three different healthcare workers weaving all three stories together, going home with them, being able to see how this affects their lives, the trauma that they're enduring too, them being really open and speaking about it very candidly. I thought that was a very effective piece in terms of understanding what healthcare workers are going through. But honestly, all four were incredible. I mean, the one with the parents died from COVID-19. I felt immediately connected to the speaker, even though I couldn't see him. I thought that one opened really beautifully and immediately grabbed you and connected you to their family story. The loss felt personal, and again, like assigning names or faces to the numbers. I thought it was really effective. I could say something good about every single one, but I want to wait and let somebody else speak.
I totally agree. I was really, really moved by the parents' loss to COVID-19. And that also stood out to me as a pretty underreported COVID-19 issue, that there are so many COVID-19 orphans. And like really, really looking at like spending time feeling very connected and looking at how catastrophic that loss is. I thought it was a really incredible video.
I feel like with each one, I kind of had a gut punch moment, particularly the one about the parental loss. That was, I think I was like immediately tearing up hearing, because he was just so raw about that loss. So, I think that's also a testament to the journalist about the fact that he was willing to open up like that. I really thought they were all really, all of them were shot very well. I appreciated that. The Cincinnati piece, I liked that editorial. I feel like a lot of times when we talk about climate change and flooding, that it's very easy to focus on infrastructural loss, which makes sense, right? Because that is also very devastating. But I appreciated that they were actually talking about kind of the emotional and mental impact of the flooding, you know, so many years later, you know, especially the moment when that one of the residents said that his mother had died in the 80s and he lost the photos he had of her. And that kind of hit me a lot. And then one of the women after that talking about the way that she's not comfortable with water anymore. And I don't think people really think about those. I would never have thought about that, but it makes a lot of sense. And yeah, and with the last piece in particular, I also appreciated kind of just like centering it in those three workers, because I could see how they could choose just to focus on one, but having it kind of those different facets of the healthcare world was really good. And then one last thing, sorry, the fire piece, it was also shot really well. And I think, one of the things I appreciate, they did use music like a lot of the other pieces, but I think they also chose the right moments to not have music, which is really, I feel like sometimes people can just like put music on and like let it go. But there was a moment when the 90-year-old man started talking about, there was a moment when he was just talking about how he wanted to rebuild. And it was just very still and quiet with his loss, which I thought was really important.
So we saw 8 really, really great videos. Our task now is to choose first, second, and third if we want to choose 3. And then there's also space for an honorable mention if we would like to do that. One way to do it is for people to, verbally advocate for the ones that they're that were striking to them. We've already said a lot about each of the videos. We could also use the Slack to, if people want to put their first, second, third choices in Slack, then we can kind of use that as a starting place to see where we are, if there's commonality among the 3 judges, and then to discuss further to solidify those placements.
And again, when you say first, second, and third, you just mean our top 3. And then if we decide as a team to give them places, is that what you think, Marcel?
Yeah. So we can, for the contest, we can name a first place winner, a second place winner, and a third place winner. But we need to come to a consensus on what those are. So, one way to do that is for each person to say sort of their top 3. It doesn't have to be in order, but just to see if we can find where the commonalities are.
I like that. If that works for Courtney and Kavitha.
If you want to put 4 or 5, that's okay too. At least to start, and then we can whittle it down from there.
And I don't know if it would help you guys, but I can like show my screen and show all of them, and whichever ones you guys rate, I can like be deducting them as you guys choose the top 3. Would that be helpful, or would you all rather just do it not sharing a screen?
I have all my notes here, so are we gonna drop?
I've got my notes as well. Yeah,
I'm sort of working off my own thing.
Okay.
Thank you,
All right.
Ashley.
Yeah, no problem. Whatever's easiest for you guys.
So we'll drop our top 3 or top 4, top 5 into Slack, Marcel?
Sure. Yep,
Okay.
into that OVPI Slack, the channel.
Okay.
And if it's helpful, you can use shorthand with the first, with a few keywords from the title. I know the titles for some of them are long. Just gonna run to the restroom. Okay, so let's see. I'm just going to try and summarize what we have. So parents died from COVID is in everyone's top 4. And then it looks like Devils in the Water was in 2 of 3. Doctors Wonder Why is 2 of 3. The Malden Fire is in 2. What We Lost, What We Found is in 2. And Crisis Mode is 2.
I did 5. I hope that's okay.
5, yes.
Okay. Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, so which one did I miss from yours?
What we lost.
What We Lost, What We Found is in 2 people's. So it seems like parents died from COVID is a top 1 for everyone.
Yes.
Do we want to select that as the first one, first place? Or does anyone want to make an argument for another first place?
Oh, should we narrow it down to our 3 first and then assign places? Is that okay? Or
Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so I'll just make
the first category. I'm like, ooh. Wait, oh boy.
I know we're a little bit behind. So we're cutting into our break time. So let's try and pick these quickly, but we'll have a grace period for our first category.
Okay, parents died definitely in the top 3.
Okay.
I'd like to make a case for crisis mode. We did see quite a few pieces that followed healthcare workers. And I found this one to be very balanced and well-paced, the editing of it, where I felt very connected to the 3 people who were following different people, and thought of the pieces we saw following healthcare workers, they had great access as well.
I agree with that. I'd also make a case for what we lost, what we found, just because I appreciated kind of the focus of it. I do agree that it might have been better just to focus on the symphony, but I think I thought the storytelling visually was really well done, and they chose the right voices, and it was just a unique way of looking at the impact of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. I also had what we lost, what we found. I would make a case of the COVID-19 coverage for the doctors wonder why it had to be this way. I thought focusing on a single character was really effective. And like I kind of said at the time, like I thought that the edit was also like a bit more innovative, and that the angle was really sharp, and the access was within COVID-19 medical worker coverage. Generally, I think the access was really unique. Like the kind of treatment that we saw him giving to patients was wrenching and like very candid. So I really liked that one.
That's true. I also had that one as one of my top for the same reasons.
I didn't, but I wish I had, because all the pieces were really good. So I concur with all of that.
Okay. So we have as 4 parents died, crisis mode, what we lost, and why it had to be this way. Does anyone want to make an argument for another one, or do we feel okay about these 4 and then we can pick places?
That feels good. Parents died, why it had to be this way, crisis mode, and what we lost, what we found. Is that what you said, Marcel?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's I just wrote them down in Slack if
oh, thanks.
If you want to look there, and then we can order them. Who wants to take a stab at putting them in an order?
Just go for it. I'd say parents died first place. Why it had to be this way second place. Crisis mode third place. What we lost honorable mention.
That is exactly what I was thinking.
I think I would have put what we lost as second, but I'm also happy to go with the majority on this one.
Anyone ever have any thoughts?
I wrestle between like those 2 options. I think that what we lost is really special and unique. And so I'm also like, I gravitate towards that one. I think I agree with Jenna on like a couple different pieces of analysis from her, that I think the structure in crisis mode was a bit tighter.
That would also be it for me. I also really enjoyed the symphony piece, and think it is incredibly valuable. I think the crisis was a bit stronger.
So this is what I have. Parents died in first. Why it had to be this way in second. Crisis mode third, and honorable mention, what we lost, what we found.